Robinson Crusoe, the novel that changed English fiction. After John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress, English fiction was still waiting for its next great transformation. Nearly 50 turbulent years passed. England experienced political conflict, religious division, revolution, and enormous social change. And then, in 1719, a remarkable book appeared. Its author was nearly 60 years old. His name was Daniel Defoe, and his novel was Robinson Crusoe. Daniel Defoe was not an ordinary novelist. He had been a journalist, a pamphleteer, a businessman, a political writer, and even a government spy. He was a man who seemed to have many lives before he finally became famous as a novelist. He was originally born Daniel Defoe. Later, he added the aristocratic-sounding D to his name, becoming Daniel Defoe. The change was small, but it reflected something important about the man. Defoe understood society. He understood ambition. He understood money, politics, reputation, survival, and the complicated ways people tried to improve their position in the world. And that understanding would become one of the greatest strengths of his fiction. Like John Bunyan before him, Defoe also experienced conflict with the state. In 1703, he was punished with the pillory and later imprisoned. But unlike Bunyan, Defoe's writing was not primarily driven by religious allegory. His imagination was much more connected to the practical world: commerce, politics, travel, adventure, and human survival. Then came Robinson Crusoe. At first glance, it looks like a simple adventure story. A man is shipwrecked on a remote island. He has almost nothing. No comfortable home, no modern technology, no society around him, no easy way to escape. He is completely alone. But this apparent simplicity hides something much more sophisticated. Robinson Crusoe does not simply tell us what happened to a man on an island. It asks a deeper question. What happens to a human being when everything familiar disappears? Crusoe must rebuild his life from almost nothing. He learns to find food. He builds shelter. He protects himself. He makes tools. He grows crops. He domesticates animals. And slowly, through patience and intelligence, he creates a new existence. The island becomes more than a setting. It becomes a test. Every problem forces Crusoe to think. Every danger demands a decision. Every successful improvement gives him another reason to continue. This is one of the qualities that made the novel so revolutionary. The hero is not a traditional knight searching for glory. He is not a prince. He is not a legendary warrior. He is an ordinary man trying to survive. His greatest weapons are his hands, his intelligence, his determination, and his ability to adapt. In that sense, Crusoe represents a changing world, the world of exploration, trade, individual ambition, and practical knowledge. Defoe also presented the story in a fascinating way. The book claims to be a true history written by Robinson Crusoe himself. Daniel Defoe presents himself almost as an editor rather than simply a novelist. In the preface, he suggests that the story should be treated as a genuine history of fact rather than obvious fiction. This technique gives the novel an extraordinary feeling of realism. The reader is encouraged to believe that Crusoe is a real person recording real experiences. And this illusion of reality was one of the reasons the book became so powerful. The reader does not simply watch Crusoe's adventure. The reader feels as though they are reading the private record of a survivor, day after day, problem after problem, decision after decision. That attention to ordinary details was revolutionary. Defoe describes practical matters that many earlier works of literature might have ignored: how to build, how to hunt, how to store food, how to protect a shelter, how to organize time, how to survive. Through these details, the extraordinary becomes believable. And Crusoe's isolation also creates a psychological journey. At first, he faces fear and despair. But gradually, he develops discipline. He begins to appreciate what he previously took for granted. He thinks about his past. He questions his choices. He considers his relationship with God. And he discovers that survival is not simply about staying alive. It is also about finding meaning. Then, after years of isolation, Crusoe encounters another human being. He rescues a man from danger and names him Friday. Friday becomes his companion and helper. Their relationship has become one of the most discussed aspects of the novel. Modern readers also recognize that the book reflects the attitudes of its own historical period, including European ideas about race, colonialism, ownership, and power. That historical context is important. Robinson Crusoe can be read as an exciting adventure story, but it can also be examined as a reflection of the expanding European world of trade and empire. This complexity is part of what has kept the novel alive. It can entertain us while also making us question the world in which it was written. The influence of Robinson Crusoe was enormous. The story helped establish a new kind of fiction, one centered on individual experience, realistic detail, personal struggle, and everyday life. It became a model for countless adventure stories, survival narratives, and castaway tales that followed. Even today, when we imagine the classic image of a shipwrecked survivor alone on an island, we are often thinking through a tradition that Defoe helped create. But perhaps the most fascinating thing about Robinson Crusoe is that its central idea remains surprisingly modern. A person is separated from society. Everything familiar disappears. And suddenly, the individual must create a life from the ground up. In a world filled with technology and convenience, that question still fascinates us. How much do we really need? What would we do if everything disappeared? Could we survive? Could we rebuild? And who would we become if we had no society around us to tell us who we were? That is why Robinson Crusoe is more than an old adventure novel. It is a story about survival. It is a story about isolation. It is a story about human ingenuity. And it is also a story about the changing world of the 18th century. Daniel Defoe had lived through political conflict, imprisonment, financial uncertainty, and social transformation. Then, late in life, he created a character whose journey would outlive him by centuries. From the loneliness of a remote island came